Hi, welcome to Viola de Gamba tutorial number 7. This video is going to look at left hand technique and left arm positioning. This is a subject that a number of my Patreons have mentioned, so I thought it would be a good time to just touch on some of the basics of positioning and technique in this area. I'm originally a cellist. And so I think my approach is largely influenced by cello technique. And I'd like to emphasize that, of course, what I'm about to explain is just my own approach. So other people's opinions may vary, and there is no correct one, at least there's no one correct way of doing things. For me, there are two sort of hand positions that we use on the viol. There's the hand position that we use for sort of regular playing, and there's the hand position that we use when we play parallel fingers, such as in chords. I'm going to talk about both of those, but I'd like to start off with what you might call the position we use for regular playing, the position that you'd most commonly use in consort music, for example, where there are no big chords that require parallel fingerings. One of the issues that I come across quite frequently in students and amateur players, and in fact in professional players as well, is a sort of lifting of the shoulder, which introduces a lot of tension and actually disrupts your hand position. So I always say that the best way to start, if you're trying to find a comfortable left hand position, is to just let your arm drop by your side and relax your shoulders, and then bring your arm up as if you were going to just take hold of your viol to stand up and leave. This results in a grip that has the fingers basically at 90 degrees to the angle of the neck, the direction of the neck. And that's more or less the way we want to have our hand when we're playing sort of regular passage work. That is to say, we want the fingers roughly in line with the direction of the frets. And we also want, and this is the most important thing, a curved shape. So I talked about the grip around the neck. I often describe this as similar to what to your hand shape if you were to sort of grab like a scaffolding pole, as if you're going to climb up. You'd have a sort of arched shape to your fingers, a round shape. And that's what we want, because not only does that position give your fingers maximum flexibility and sort of movement potential. You can stretch your fingers really quite nicely in that position. It's also a very efficient shape to distribute weight. This shape essentially prevents your fingers from collapsing. So if a common victim of finger collapse is the fourth finger. If your finger is very flat on the keyboard, on the fingerboard, then it's easy for it to sort of collapse in at the joints. If it's nicely curved, then the force, the arm weight, which we'll talk about in a minute, is distributed nicely and evenly down through the finger, into the fingertip, and then into the fingerboard. You can imagine or picture one of those ancient Roman arches or bridges, which are built of individual stones all angled with a keystone at the top. And there's no mortar, there's no glue-like substance. The stones, and therefore the bridge or the arch, are kept in place just by the weight of the individual stones. And that's kind of how we're sort of picturing the left-hand technique here. As a counter-example of that, if you were to angle your fingers, and this is something I see violinists doing a lot. If a violinist takes up the viol for the first time, their automatic approach is to play really at quite extreme angles. And the problem with this is it really restricts the movement of your fingers, especially with the fourth finger. So if I was to try and go from the top fret here all the way to the fifth fret, I can't really do it. I'd have to really kind of stretch, and it's really uncomfortable. If my hand is at 90 degrees to the fingerboard, then that distance is easily covered by a bit of a opening out of the fingers. So once we've got this nice curved hand shape, we can start to talk about weight. I mentioned that the curved shape is an excellent and efficient distributor of weight across the fingers. And that's because, for me, what we're doing when we put our fingers on the fingerboard is not pressing the fingers down, it's allowing the arm weight to sort of pull the fingers into the fingerboard. And this, ideally, avoids the sense that one needs to push with the fingers and the thumb, which can cause all kinds of problems, from difficulty moving around the fingerboard to physical pain in the wrist and the fingers. So what I mean by weight is the fingers and the arm are very tightly connected, very closely connected. If your arm is in an odd position, then the fingers can't use the arm weight to push the string down into the fret, or to pull the string down into the fret, I should say. So if we have our arm really high, then you are physically lifting the weight out of your fingers. If your arm is too close to the body, the same is true. You can't use the arm weight because your arm is pinned to your side. Both of these are issues that I see in lessons. So instead, what we want is to establish a relationship in the shape of the arm in relation to the fingers and the hand. And maybe this is me inventing things, but I always see this as very, very similar to the golden spiral, which is the shape that appears mathematically in everything from the water circling your drain to the shape of galaxies. And this shape is everything is connected. Every point in the line is connected to every other point. So I may be able to overlay that in post-production with the spiral I'm talking about. But essentially, you want to have a relationship between the tips of your fingers, and then this spiral shape radiates out from there around your hands, over your wrist, and then down your arm. And that relationship is in a way unchanging. It's a solid, albeit relaxed shape. And with that shape, if you lift your arm, if you put your fingers on the fingerboard, and then you lift your arm, you'll feel your fingers coming off the string and off the fingerboard, and you wouldn't be able to play like that. If, on the other hand, you slowly lower your arm, you'll feel the weight of your arm start to pull the fingers into the fingerboard, to the point where you're actually making sufficient contact that you are stopping the string. So you're stopping the string. I'll just play you an example of that. So if I start with my fingers, my arm raised, that's what's happening to my fingers. As I bring my arm down, you'll get to a point where the fingers are exerting enough weight into the string that you're able to stop the note. If you continue to lower your arm, then the same thing happens. You actually start to push the hand away from the string, and contact becomes much more difficult. The benefit of this approach is that you're not squeezing, you're allowing the arm to sort of pull the fingers into the string. And in fact, you can start to feel then that the frets act almost as the rungs on a ladder. They're not something to be pushed against, but rather they're something that supports the hand, almost something that stops the hand sliding down the fingerboard. You can use them to climb up the fingerboard using your own arm weight. The second position of the arm and the hand is the position that we use for parallel fingering. And this is very similar to the first bit. We'll call this the second position for just for now, for lack of a better term. So rather than having your hand parallel to the fingerboard or at 90 degrees, we shift the hand so that it starts to look more like that of a violinist. But we keep the relationship between the hand and the arm. So you don't start to fold at the wrist, because again, if you do that, you have to then push the strings down with your fingers, and that creates tension in the wrist and causes pain. Instead, if we move from the regular position that we've just discussed, and you just lift the arm up, then you create the space you need to be able to put individual fingers down next to each other on parallel strings. So there's a sort of rotation and a lifting of the arm, and then you can play full chords. The next major issue with the left hand is the thumb. Where do we put the thumb? This was a point of some contention in the 17th century. You had two schools. The school of viol playing that considered the viol an extension of the lute, and this was espoused by people like de Machy, versus the sort of new school of viol playing that was more vocal or more lyrical in nature, espoused by viol players like Saint-Colomb. The old school of playing, which treated the viol like an extension of the lute, used a lutenist's position. They had the thumb opposite the first finger. But the more forward-looking, dare I say, viol players who wrote more lyrical music, Saint-Colomb and then his students and people like Marais, seem to have favoured a position where the thumb was opposite the second finger. It's still a bit of a risky business talking about this because there's no great agreement. It was a sort of war of words at the time. My approach, I think, is just to do what comes naturally. For me, that means that the thumb ends up landing sort of between the two fingers, actually. I find that if you force the thumb into a particular relationship with the first or second finger, that introduces tension which can be detrimental to your hand's well-being. Now that we have this relaxed position where the thumb is between the index finger and the middle finger, actually the most important thing is to make sure that you're not pushing up against the back of the neck with the thumb. And this is why my approach of using arm weight to pull the fingers into the string is for me, really useful, because it eliminates the need for you to push up, because your arm weight is the thing that is engaging the string and the fret. That said, the thumb should be in contact with the back of the neck. And in fact, this is a really useful guide, your thumb. And in fact, it acts sort of as an anchor point. If your thumb is in a regular position, it gives your fingers a point of reference. So if you're playing scales, or you have to, even something as simple as playing with your first finger and then needing to find the fifth fret with your fourth finger, your thumb being in that regular place allows your fingers to sort of generate muscle memory, and it will increase the accuracy of your fingering. The same can be said for shifting. Because your thumb is in contact with the back of the neck, you can feel the frets pass over your thumb or under your thumb as you move the hand up the neck or back down again, and that will again help you make leaps from one position to the next, because you will feel where you are relative to the frets. And this brings me to my last brief point. Try not to lift your fingers away from the fingerboard while you're playing. I see a lot of people playing scales or pieces where they play a first finger and the rest of their fingers are high up in the air. And this means two things. One, it takes more time for the finger to be brought down when it's needed. And secondly, it makes it really difficult to know where to put that finger. Even if your thumb is in its regular place, because you have so much distance to travel, and because the angle of your hand on the fingerboard is so distorted up here, it's hard to know where to put your fingers when they arrive. So a useful thing to practice is scales. ascending and descending, making sure that your fingers don't end up here or even around here. I'm one to talk. I have a habit myself of curling my fingers, and I'm trying to undo that habit. But playing scales with the fingers relatively available it is a really useful exercise. It also comes in handy when you start practicing the tenues, the holding down of fingers to create resonance, because you need to practice having your fingers readily available and close to the fingerboard in order to be able to do that. I hope you found that lesson useful. This was commissioned by my Patreon members, and if you'd like to be able to commission a video for yourself on a subject of your choice, then you can subscribe to my Patreon account. The Patreon account also gives you access to my ever-growing collection of Music Minus One videos and audio files. So you can find out more information if you visit patreon.com/Sam Stadlen. I'll put the address at the end of the video and in a clickable link in the description box just below the video. And I look forward to welcoming you as a member. Thank you very, very much for watching. If you liked it, please consider liking and subscribing using the YouTube buttons below. And I will see you next time.